This video is sponsored by EA, and first and foremost, even though this video is sponsored by EA, these are going to be my own opinions. I'm going to tell you how I think it is, whether it happens to be right or wrong. I'm going to tell you what I believe. And I really do believe that Madden 22 is not only a gigantic step in the right direction, it's a gigantic step, period. There have been a lot of changes made to Madden overall with Madden 22 that are going to be awesome changes for franchise players in particular. If you've been subscribed to this channel for a long time, of course you know I'm going to tell you how it is. But you also know I'm a big franchise guy. It's a huge part of this channel. I love franchise. I love the video opportunities that franchise mode brings me. And there should be even more opportunities this year. The mode really has taken a huge step towards a giant overall, and there are a lot of really cool features we're going to talk about in today's video. It's a long video. Strap in. We're going to do an interview, podcast style thing with Moonlight Swami, who's been a content creator for a long time over the last decade and has also now been working at EA as a franchise designer over the last couple of years. So he's as passionate about franchises as anyone watching this video, I can promise you, and it's awesome to have guys like him working on franchise and working to really emphasize that for Madden over the coming years, and especially with Madden 22. A lot of fun changes. Hope you guys are excited about them as I am, and let's go ahead and do a deep dive on the deep dive, breaking down all these new things and giving you guys a really in-depth perspective via a franchise designer.
Ready to dive in head first right into the kiddie pool.
Oh yeah? That seems like a hazard. I haven't seen a deep dive like that since they scavenged the wreckage of the Titanic. Are you laughing? All right. So, deep dive, Madden franchise, joined by Moonlight Salami, currently at EA _ Salami. What's going on?
How's it going, everybody? Andre Weingarten, franchise designer. I also go by Moonlight Swami on YouTube, and been part of the community for a very long time, since about 2010.
Yeah, so basically what this video is, as I may have alluded to already, this video is talking about the franchise deep dive, sponsored by EA, of course. I probably already mentioned that. But we have a developer, former community member, I guess current community member, but former content creator, so that adds a unique element to it as well. And first and foremost as well, you're a franchise player, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
You want the same things that a lot of us want, and you know, are extremely eager to talk about the changes made to Madden with Madden 22.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not just a franchise player. I'm in a 32-man league, so I've played both offline solo a lot, and I'm also in a competitive league. So I've at least experienced the gamut, if you will.
So I figured that the best way to kind of break down the deep dive for the fans out there is we're just going to watch it, and we'll touch on different points as we go along. I know there's certain things that EA and you guys want to wait a little bit until you reveal, but I'm going to try and get as much out of you as I possibly can. So
squeeze me like an orange.
Let's go ahead and talk about things. So obviously got Trevor Lawrence in there to just a little bit of a prelude to some of the features. All right, so franchise staff. This was a big one. We're going to pause here because there's a lot to take in on the screen, whether it's with the head coach, either of the coordinators, and player personnel. So there are different talent focuses. And, of course, staff points is a new feature coming to Madden 22. Do you want to elaborate on some of these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So staff points is your real type of, I guess, personnel currency this year, instead of it being Coach XP. So you're going to earn staff points by playing games, by completing game day goals, or by making progress on game day goals. We've added a really cool function in those game day goals where if you don't get a full goal completion, like let's say a goal of throw for 300 yards and you throw for 275, you're going to get a partial completion amount of staff points to show that you were on track, you got really close, but you didn't end up getting all of it. So you earn these staff points.
What's the threshold on that? Is it just like you have to be generally close enough, or say you threw for 200 yards, you got 2/3 of the way there? What's the credit up to?
Yeah, it's kind of like a progress point around halfway. So as long as you meet probably close to half the goal, it depends on each goal specifically, right? Sometimes there's just not a 50% mark on some of them, but like prevent the opponent from scoring 3 touchdowns. right? You know, there's no 50% mark, so it's just kind of whichever side you fall on. But yeah, it's things like that to at least give you some sort of credit and reward for trying and for getting somewhat close. And then obviously you get the full reward if you actually achieve it. So those staff points are earned, and you're able to spend it on any of your staff characters. As you can see, we have 4 of them here.
Some are more familiar than others.
Yes.
Let me ask you this on staff points. I'm assuming you can get those through simulation. Is that a correct assumption?
Yes,
you get
absolutely.
them with meeting different game day goals or different simulation stats, something along those lines?
Yes, absolutely. So there are also scenarios that can trigger them, that you can earn some. But if you don't, if you're just simming straight through, you're going to get defaulted goals. And if you meet them, you get the staff points. So, you can simulate a full season, and depending on how your team plays, you might have, 55 staff points. You might have 150 staff points. There's some variance there.
Let's talk about some of these talent focuses, because we can see different things. The player personnel is what interests me the most. Of course, I like the team building aspect. I know everyone has their different kind of focus in franchise, and I think it's great that, in theory, what everyone wants the franchise mode to be is something for everybody, because it should be a really deep experience, and I think you guys have gone a long way to upgrade that for Madden 22. I don't think anyone's going to be able to say, oh, this is just the same franchise experience as it was last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. This year, a lot of changes have been made, and they will continue to be made with the live updates along the course of the year. We'll talk about scouting as much as we can here in a minute. I know you guys are waiting to reveal some of that in the coming month and a half or so. But there are different talent focuses for each member of the staff. So head coach, both coordinators, and player personnel. What are some of your favorite talents? Can you tell us more about some of these things and what some of the best ones are? Because we can only see that they are there. We don't know what they do. We don't know what the best ones are. Give us the inside scoop of what we're going to be focusing on when we get our hands on the game.
Absolutely. So starting with what the talent focus is, these are basically labels to show progress down the talent trees that you're going to see in a minute in this trailer. So, the wheeler and dealer, for example, this is all, for the most part,
and that's in the player personnel.
Yes. Yeah. These are all, for the most part, placeholder at the moment, because, we've changed them and modified, but that is indicative of, let's say you had a trade talent purchased that is along the lines of being able to acquire players over the age of 30 more easily in trades. So basically their value to their existing team is lower when you try to trade for them. That would be an example of one of those talents. So, you might value them because they're a mentor. They might not value them because they know they're not part of their long-term future. So that's an example of one of those brand new type of talents that we added to the trades. And each character has their own type of talent and really objectives. You can see basically based on the names of what we're calling subtrees, right? Player growth in head coach, staff modifications, on the block, practice makes perfect for the offensive coordinator, etc. We really separated out all of the coach characters into different strengths, right? So head coach focuses more on the long-term growth of your players and building up of your staff. Offensive and defensive coordinators focus on game day preparation for the most part, right? That's what they do. They're kind of like rolling up all of the positional coaches from your staff on each side of the ball into that character, because an offensive coordinator might be a former quarterback guy, but how much influence does he have differently from what the quarterback coach has? Right? So how do you capture the essence of what the entire staff does and the offensive coordinator does without making them either too strong or too weak? And then player personnel, it's all about retention and player acquisition.
As far as I understand it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this, at least with the talents for the player personnel, it makes the trade system new and unique to each different personnel guy. So if you did a franchise, let's say you're the Bears, that's relevant. So you could get these different talents equipped, and you could be able to trade for these older players or younger players, whatever these talents are. We don't know them all yet.
Yeah.
So you could start a different franchise with, let's say, the Chiefs and not be able to make the same type of trade happen? Like a third-round pick for, let's say, Von Miller could happen with a specific talent. However, a third-round pick with no abilities equipped, maybe that trade doesn't go through.
Yeah, I mean,
how that works.
Yeah, that might be a little bit more of an extreme example, but yes. So some of the other talents to give you an idea is like increasing the value of your draft picks to the computer. So if you are a team that wants to kind of build through free agency, if you want to just build through trades, you have that option. The other is their draft picks are easier to acquire for you. So if you want to build through the draft, that's another type of talent. A guaranteed trade package every time you're on the clock in the draft is a talent. So I know that that's one that's always been a stickler for me personally. That's like, I have this great pick, it's the 38th pick in the draft, and nobody wants it, or the draft, the trade packages are terrible, right? Either one. So that's always bothered me. So we made that a guarantee for that. So even if it's like, oh yeah, it's pick 221, well, someone might be interested. They might offer you a 6th round pick next year, or a 7th round pick next year, or whatever it may be.
So has some of that been tuned? Because a lot of with the draft, you might have the number 1 overall pick, and then the trade offers for that pick might be, oh, we'll give you a 1st next year and a 2nd this year, and that's the big offer. And you go, I don't want that. Has some of that stuff been tuned?
Yeah. So, feedback is always appreciated in that space because it's very touchy. But when we made the changes in 21 continuous development, we really did an emphasis on the values of everybody, right? The values of players, the values of picks. So theoretically, they should be a lot better in that space where, they're going to offer you things based on that. Obviously, there are limitations because there are 3 slots and, because there's 2 years worth of draft picks that you can work with. But it should be better. The offers should be better. And, that's something that we will continuously look at through our tuning efforts, through patches, etc., because we want to make sure that is as fun and interesting as possible. But speaking of in the draft, there's a talent specifically, and it's the ultimate talent at the end of the player personnel trade tree.
So this is the one that everyone's going to want? Break it down for me.
Makes it easier to trade up during the draft.
Ooh.
So, some of those are values in general, right? Your picks or their picks. That is outside of the draft. This is inside the draft, where if there's a guy on the clock that you really want and you're trying to move up, it makes it easier to move up in that situation. So,
yeah, that definitely is a fun addition. I am in love with these talents already because I think it does add to that immersion, and I think it adds to how unique each experience is going to be. It's just less, I'll say cut and dry because it is what it is previously, but now it seems like things are going to change. It's going to be a more fun experience because it's going to be more unique, and you have the ability to do some more fun things, we'll say.
Yes, and I'll emphasize, especially for the trades, we're going to break immersion a little bit with it, right? If you have all of these talents and they somehow are stacking and doing this sort of thing, you might be able to do some trades that are a little bit out there beyond what is realistic. And,
okay.
But we were okay with that. We wanted to, because trades
you
themselves...
You have the option to not do the talent, right? So you
correct,
can,
yeah, you can totally avoid it. But it's really along those lines of, we want you to be able to have fun with this. And that's one of those areas that trade value is very subjective in general. So, there's some situations where you might be able to make a trade that's like, that's a little bit much, but it's like, oh, I have all these talents and, it boosts my value by this and it boosts their value by that. Okay. So it kind of gives you additional, I guess what we call it, power that is a little bit beyond the scope of realism, but that's only if you so choose to do it. It's not like it's the default or anything.
I will say that you can only do so many things in the scope of realism and still have it be fun. I don't think there's a player... Actually, let me rephrase it. There definitely are players, but for the most part, no one's going to want to have a Julio Jones type receiver on their team and then be thinking about a rebuild, so maybe you trade Julio Jones and receive a 2nd round pick in return. You're going to want more for a top tier player like that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Let's go ahead and jump on into the next area here.
Yep.
I think we've covered staff management. Seems like it's the big big upgrade for Madden 22 franchise so far.
It's one of them. There are a lot. So one of the other really cool things about this, if you pause it here, is taking a look at offensive coordinator, for example. If you notice on the left-hand side, first off, that first talent, what does that look like to you?
Right here
on
at the
the
top,
block.
on the block? Sure looks like the Superstar X Factor logo.
Yep. So that literally means that unless you have that talent purchased, you will not be able to equip X Factors on that side of the ball for your team.
Oh, really?
So it's kind of like the feeling out process for a coordinator, right? Mm-hmm. You have a new coordinator, and if he's not up to par, and we put it first for that very reason, we don't want to necessarily detract from your game experience, but if he doesn't have that familiarity, he might not be able to maximize his star players. So that's kind of the logic behind that. But as you work your way down the trees, you can see that there are 2 columns in this example, and some have more, but those 2 columns, you're going to have to make a decision point here. So, on the block example, that hand and that little, stop
rocket ship.
Yeah, the hand and the rocket ship versus the stop, the guardrail and the train. Those are, you have to make a decision. Do you want to get the impact blocking boost for one position or the other? And if you choose, let's say, the left-hand side, the 2 on the right are no longer accessible to you. So you are going to have to make a decision on how do you want to build your team. You can't just buy everything on this tree. Mm-hmm. And we thought that would be a really important part of your modular experience, right? So every single time you go through a franchise, you can build your team the way you deem fit based on your team and what you want to do with them. But you're not going to be able to do everything. So it kind of makes it a really big decision point that makes each franchise feel different, right? If you're Andy Reid, you might have things leaning towards wide receivers over leaning towards defensive players, right? That just a very broad example. Offensive-minded head coaches might have more offensive things than defensive, and you won't be able to build up both sides of that tree. So, do you emphasize a strength, or do you emphasize maybe a weakness to build that up to make your team more well-rounded? That's up to you to choose.
Definitely makes sense to make the player choose. Can't have it all. It'd be too easy, and that kind of ruins the fun. Can't just have it all. You gotta overcome the challenge. But definitely some cool things here. Can you tell us about some of these abilities down at the bottom? Because we can see that they have a crown on top. I guess that's not only signifying you're to the end of the tree, but what's going on with some of these?
Yeah.
Can you say?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of these, well, they're all your ultimate talents, right? Those are the things that are, for the most part, the strongest in terms of the boost, in terms of what they do in-game. So we collaborated a lot with the gameplay team, especially for offensive and defensive coordinator, to figure out what is the most powerful thing that we could do that isn't immersion breaking. It's like, what could a coaching staff teach throughout practice, throughout the week, develop that isn't one overpowered like man coverage or zone coverage, but is also impactful enough that shapes the team. So the one on the left, that is a boost to your strength rating for offensive linemen. So strength rating, for those who are not fully aware, has to do for offensive linemen with their ability to sustain blocks in the run game. So boosting that means that you're essentially making them better run blockers in general. Conversely, on the defensive side, it's the ability to withstand double teams and to be able to work past offensive linemen in those types of spaces. So strength has a lot of different meanings in the trenches than it does in some other areas, and I thought that would be one of the big areas that we could target after talking with them. But some of the other trees have ultimate talents like that. They also have renewable talents.
Renewable talents.
Yes, I wanted to get your reaction to let you process that for a second.
Renewable talents. I'm going to need you to expand on that.
Okay.
For
so
sure.
Renewable talents are things that you can purchase maybe once per season. Sometimes it's once per part of a season. It might be once per obviously not once per franchise because that wouldn't be renewable. But so really once per season is what we're doing for this year, and those are really super powerful, interesting things that modify Madden itself in the game. So I think my favorite talent in this period is We've Seen Enough, which is a talent in the head coaching tree where you select one player with a hidden dev trait on your team, and you are able to automatically reveal it once per season.
Interesting.
Yep,
That's a decent segue into the thing that we'll talk about now with the fog of war aspect, where like you can draft these players and you don't know their dev trait. Everything's hidden for the most part. So you find out at the end of the season what that is?
So right now it's 0 out of 500 snaps, right? That's okay. How you you have 500 snaps to reveal a player's dev trait if they are star, superstar, or X Factor currently. And so this would be if they are anywhere below that 500 mark, that they will you'll be able to automatically reveal their dev trait, one player per season. So
that's a good amount. That's a good amount.
Yeah.
And I mean, how many stud players are you going to draft anyway? It's going to be an interesting thing to see. That's a very cool aspect.
Yeah.
That's for the head coach, you said?
Yes. And
what are some of the player personnel things?
Well, I'll get there in a second. I'll drop you 2 nuggets just because I know that we've talked, a lot about, drafting too many stud players. We've done a lot of tuning around how many players with hidden dev trait will be populating in draft classes, especially early in the draft. We're getting a lot more right now through that continuous tuning.
I think the way that was phrased made it sound like I had been complaining about there being too many good players in the draft, which is the complete opposite.
Yes, he's been complaining. Yeah, he's been complaining about too few.
Rightfully so, honestly. Rightfully so.
Yeah, we put a greater emphasis on the guys who are going to populate early in the draft with hidden dev trait. And we're seeing a good number. I think through testing recently we saw anywhere between 55 and 65 players in the draft with hidden dev trait, with a good majority, probably about between 60 and 80% in the first round with hidden dev trait. So you're going to get those guys. You're going to feel rewarded there for that.
Thank you.
Specifically.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And
there got to a point in my Madden 21 rebuild videos to where it just turned into a complaining fest during the draft every time. I go, oh, great, another normal development player. And then I would look in the entire draft recap and I go, oh, the first 15 players all have the lowest dev trait you can get. That's fun.
Yeah, we have some controls on that. And you're going to like some of the other things about the draft that we've made improved. And we also fixed a bug where hidden dev trait, sometimes it would get, like if you progressed it, you got a scenario, guy was normal and you became star, sometimes the snap count wouldn't work. Mm-hmm. We addressed something like that in for Madden 22. That was a big pain point for a lot of people. So just to wrap up that, but player personnel, I already told you one of the hidden talents, or one of the ultimate talents, being the trading up in the draft. The other one, I'll tell you. We call it we call it the unlocker, as you can see by that key in the bottom right hand corner.
Yeah, here's the 3 trees that you were talking about, or 3 branches.
Yeah, and these you can pretty much purchase most of them, but they're prerequisites to get to the down the line. Well, I didn't feel like it would be valuable as much to lock out specific branches, especially with the amount of talents we needed for the contracts page. But Unlocker makes it where if a player is no longer willing to negotiate with you, right? You messed up in re-signing, you get one more shot with them. One more nice. Chance. Yeah, once per season. And that nice one at the top, the football in the basket, that is hometown discount. So it's 3 tiers. And I thought this would be a good one to at least get people excited. The first tier is players, I think, probably under 75 overall are more likely to are willing to take less to re-sign with you. The second tier is, I believe, 80 or 85, and then the last tier is 90 or below. So the superstars and the elite players will still want their market value, but other guys are more willing to stick around because of what you are building as a team.
That's definitely a fun change. I mean, as far as I can tell, it seems like so many of these talents just add to the replay value and add to the immersion and add to the fun because each experience is not the same every time, which is a beautiful thing. As a franchise fan and player myself, obviously.
Yep, absolutely. And, we really wanted to modify the experience in a positive way. And I think the really cool thing about the talent tree system itself is that it is incredibly modular, in the sense that any system that we build in the future can be incorporated into this. So Weekly Strategy has something that we'll get to in a little bit. I'm not going to mention it right now. Once we get to Weekly Strategy in this video, I can bring it up. But we've incorporated stuff from Weekly Strategy in here as well. So any new feature that we add can be incorporated in for talents.
Can you give me a couple more of these from the trades? I see we see mentors wanted at the top here, trade discount on older players, but that's the first one. What are some of these other ones? I mean, the logos are pretty fun. You can see the money spilling out there, and I don't know, the scissors cutting out a helmet. What's going on with some of these?
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones I talked about with the trading up. Your draft picks cost more in trade, so like opposing teams will value them higher, so you can get more when you trade draft picks, or vice versa. Things like that. I don't want to go too much into the trade ones, but we've covered most of them. As you can see, there's not a ton on the tree in terms of variety, but there's a lot of good things here.
Yeah, definitely a very cool new addition. All right, so scouting, I know you can't say a ton about it right now, or really much about it, but as we heard, targeting September.
Yep.
It seems to be kind of a loose date.
Yep, it's I can't tell you anything more about it. We are targeting the September timeframe for our first big continuous development drop. This is going to be part of that, and let's just say it is a total revamp of scouting from the way that it is now. It is a lot more in depth, a lot more information, and I'll just leave it at that. As you can see on the screen, there's a map. And I'll leave it at that. That there's going to be a lot of really cool, interesting things. We've spent a lot of time planning and working on this, and we had two options. We were either going to push it to 23, or we were going to get it into that first continuous development drop. And I think everyone internally felt very strongly about putting the extra time to get it in now rather than wait.
I think that was definitely a wise move. I think there are going to be players that are upset that it's not in the game at launch, but I think when you understand that this was, as far as I understand, the only way you could get it into Madden 22 was waiting just a little bit after launch until the feature's finalized. I think players are going to be happy with it. You don't have to wait that long, maybe a month or two, but it should be a game-changing overhaul as far as I understand it.
Yes, absolutely. An entirely new way of interacting with scouting.
Yeah, and you just can sit there and I'll tell everyone what they're looking at, essentially. This seems like an area where you can hire different scouts that have different, not only positional expertise, but that you can see their different experience. We don't really know what that does yet, if anything. Maybe it's just some information. But we can also see that there are different tiers here. And it seems to be sorted in the way that most of the higher numbers are at the top. Maybe the higher tier, and I'm not going to ask you to weigh in on this, but maybe the higher tier adds to how quickly they can scout these players, maybe how accurately they can scout these players as well. And different regional scouts, this is pretty clear. Not every scout is going to be able to scout everywhere. However, there might be one national scout that can check out guys from different areas, and you can see the different positions where he excels and the different boosts that are in effect here. 15% efficiency boost when scouting a position. That seems pretty good. So it seems like, from my understanding, just from reading this, that you're not going to be able to all in one go completely scout a player. But with an efficiency boost, depending on how good your scout is, might be able to scout a player faster than another scout, maybe an area scout who covers the Northeast or the Southeast, etc. Probably looking at the Southeast for some pretty good players coming out of that, if you guys are college football fans. But it seems like there's a lot going on with scouting. We have to wait a little bit longer. A lot of Tonys in here. Very popular name. Ooh, Devin Peden. He looks a little bit different than I remember him. Confirmed player selection. So you can privately work out some of these guys. I assume learning more information about them when you do. And finally, mock drafts will be entering the game. Is that going to be in that same kind of scouting wave? Or when scouting gets added, this gets added?
Yeah, it's all part of the same network.
Mock drafts are really cool. I think that adds to the immersion because you can think about where these players might be, and you know, the accuracy of these remains to be seen. It was also talked about in the deep dive how the board, just like in real life, is ever changing, ever evolving, ever moving. More to share on scouting later in the summer. All right, here we go.
Yep, later in the summer. That's when we'll be able to talk more about it.
We'll wait eagerly and maybe not that patiently. I need to know now. So weekly team goal selection. It's a big new feature as well, right?
Yep, and this is what we were talking about earlier with the partial completion goals and earning those staff points. You'll be able to select one for your head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator each week, relative to who you're facing.
Very cool addition. So you earn points, earn those staff points to unlock those really cool talents like that. Each different member of your team with the head coach and both head coordinators get the staff points up there. So not only are you playing for the win, you're playing for staff points, which is the long-term future of the team.
Yep, and I will say the pool of staff points is one, right? So every single character is pulling from the same pool of staff points. So it's not like old NCAA where if you completed a goal specifically for one character, that was the only one that you could spend that on. This is universal. So if you earned, 60 staff points, you could spend all of it on player personnel, even if you earned it from goals from completing something for your offensive coordinator.
Very cool. Very cool. Weekly strategy. This was a big point for you guys as well to make this more involved and kind of develop this feature.
Yeah, weekly strategy was a heavy lift working with our gameplay team to get this in. This really replaces your game planning, your training that you would deal with every week. So you're picking an offensive focus and a defensive focus based on your opponent each week. So you can see their top threat, you can see where they're good, where they're not, and make those calculated decisions each week. And that will give you boosts when defending certain things. Like right here, for example, blitz prep, increased chance of double moves, fake outs versus off coverage, right? So you're basically blocker awareness of blitz, double moves versus off coverage work. Defense reacts quicker to short passes, though. So there's different things that you're pro and conning about each individual, I guess, focus that you're going to be working in. So there's risk reward. I think the example that we like to use internally is if you choose to stop, let's say, Lamar Jackson's scrambling, right? You're going to increase contain efficiency. You're going to increase the awareness of him on the read option keepers, but you're going to be more susceptible to his passing. So, are you willing to take one thing away and really commit to it in your weekly strategy to, and make him beat you with his second best asset?
So we talked a little bit about the different game plan focuses, Lamar Jackson, whether you choose to contain him, maybe get less of a pass rush, you make yourself more susceptible to him through the air, as good as that may be. Let's talk about these halftime adjustments, completely new feature to Madden NFL 22. What are these?
So just like you select your weekly focus in weekly strategy, let's say team comes out and they are just doing something totally different, right? Let's say Lamar is shredding you through the air and you need to make an adjustment on the spot. At halftime, you'll be able to adjust your game plan to do this. And I think that's really one of the interesting facets of, are you going to make yourself susceptible to that now, right? Are you going to counter your counter? It's a chess match throughout the entirety of the game, and this is your chance at a redo, right? If you made the wrong decision at the beginning of your week, of your preparation. And I think this is really cool, especially in multi-user leagues, because if you're choosing a game plan focus and you expect someone to do something and they just throw you a curveball, you have a chance to kind of take that back with this halftime adjustment.
And I already know against the computer, I want to play Lamar Jackson and commit to stopping him on the run. And then he's going to pass all over me. I'm going to change up my focus and then get torched on the ground. So I'm going to be super excited about that. But it seems cool. Like if you're trying to stop a certain element and it turns out that you're getting destroyed in the other aspect, well, you're going to want to not just get killed for the whole second half with the same focus.
Yep.
So it makes sense to change that up and make a halftime adjustment the way you would in real football.
100%.
So what about the practices here? You can manage your player health. We saw it a little bit with the game plan focus. We saw injury management in the bottom right, and we see practice intensity. These are all new things, and I have no idea what changes. So give me the breakdown. What's going on here?
Yeah. Okay, so starting off, as you can see, overall offensive fatigue is set to 100% in this screenshot. Progressive fatigue throughout the season is a new addition to Madden 22. So players are going to fatigue over the course of the year, and let's say it's week 4, and you've been going full steam ahead. You've been doing full pads practices. Let's look at Mike Evans, for example. He might start the game at 90% fatigue instead of 100%, right? That how on what percentage of fatigue, how fatigued he is 10% in that example.
And that will of course affect his performance and his ratings?
Yes, absolutely. And he will never in that game be able to get above 90%. Ooh. So it's all going down from there, right? He's getting more tired throughout the course of the game. So when you look at the practice intensity, you can go full pads, half pads, and that kind of gives you the idea of, are you going to really go full speed ahead in practice, have these guys, making contact, you're going to make them more tired, but you're going to get the highest amount of XP and the biggest ratings boost tied to your weekly strategy? Or do you go half pads and you get, less, but you also are going to limit how much fatigue they're accruing during that week? You can also go on a position by position basis and say, do I want my starter to do it this week? Do I want it to be a split between him and the backup, or do I want the backup to be the one who's getting all of the reps? And I'll sacrifice some of that XP gain for that week because I want to get, Tom Brady healthy. That's one of those examples. And there's also practice injuries now.
Oh, interesting.
So practice injuries, 1 week injuries, usually tied to full pads, so you have to be careful with it. But you can turn that off. We have a league setting for that if you really don't want to deal with practice injuries. Mm-hmm. But it's not like you're going to have Tom Brady tear his ACL and be out for the season in practice. It's just going to be a 1 week thing where you're going to have to make an adjustment because you went too hard trying to get the maximum player XP.
That makes sense. Adds to the immersion for sure.
Yep.
Of course, the training recap, so depending on how hard you go. Oh, knee cartilage tear for Mecole Hardman. That's tough.
Yeah, that's rough. And as you can see, we still do have focus XP. So we do have focus players still sticking around. And there are 3 of them, which at first, that's like, oh yeah, that's 3. But I told you we had integration with weekly strategy in the talent tree, right? Mm-hmm. There is a talent towards the bottom of the staff modifications tree, which is you will be able to have an additional focus player that is 3 tiers as a talent. So you can purchase it 3 times. You will have 6 maximum focus players each week in weekly strategy if you've purchased that talent. So instead of making it where you're only focusing on a few guys, now everybody gets involved. And another big change, every single player on your team practices. There's no more, some people don't, some people do. Every position, every player practices.
New season engine.
Yeah, so the season engine is what we have referred to as scenarios, right? Mm-hmm. You've seen them before, the boss battles and things like that. We've ripped out a lot of the text messages and brought in the modular cinematics, which is what you're seeing right here with Cliff Kingsbury. We had a lot of these in Face of the Franchise, and because it uses a very similar technology stack, whatever. No, I'm not going to go into technical terms here, but we're bringing a lot of that over. So you're going to see a lot more face-to-face conversations between characters, rather than it being just very impersonal text messages. We also added a ton of different scenarios. Yeah.
Also, I had a bug about this when I was watching. They called a middling receiver when they were referring to Dwayne Eskridge, who's going to be a superstar. It's unbelievable.
The 28-year-old rookie?
He's not 28. He's 24, I believe.
Yeah, and he's an old man.
He made Western Michigan worth watching. He's going to be a star.
Well, he's
Remember
gonna be
Dwayne
normal.
Eskridge.
He's going to be normal, I'll tell you that.
Boo. I wasn't talking about development. I mean, like, he's genuinely...
I know.
Look at that catch. Could you see how good he is from that catch? He's unbelievable. No, he is an interesting player.
He is.
Killed everyone at the Senior Bowl. Care about that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
I do.
Yeah.
You know who else did? Scary Terry. And look at him now.
Yeah, except he was young and yeah.
Is he younger than Dwayne Eskridge right now? He might be.
I think he is.
Whatever. New franchise up. So this was completely overhauled, and it definitely looks very, very new. But above just looking new, what are some of the new features, and why was this decision made?
Yeah, so the hub itself, when we sat down and discussed what we wanted to do for Madden 22, I think the first thing we said was we need to make it look different, because really if we make a lot of changes, that's great, but if it doesn't look different, it's going to feel too similar. So we wanted to really overhaul everything about this screen and this situation, bring some very important information right into your face, and make it powerful. People in our building have said it's the most powerful individual screen that has probably ever existed in Madden.
There's a lot going on.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it. All of the tabs is still one screen, right? It's not like you have to go into the submenu. So you have your home, your news, your league tab, all the options. It's all in one place. Plus you have, all these different things to it. Your goals, your standings, the top threats, the matchups. And then on the left-hand side, the activities list really brings you back to some of the old school Madden type user interface, right? If you remember from like Madden 05, 06, 07, it was really set up this way, where it was a left-hand list. And, we wanted to make that really feel different and interesting. As you can see, it's Chargers week because you're facing the Chargers. Just make it a lot more personal on top of everything else.
Yeah, I think that's definitely well represented. It's funny that you mentioned the nod to the old Maddens, because when I saw this for the first time, I go, this feels obviously new to the last few Maddens, but I'm like, there's something that's oddly familiar about this.
Yeah.
So to have that confirmed is very nice. There's a lot going on. I think this puts a bigger emphasis on the news tab as well, because you had to go searching for that in the last few games, and I think no one used it for that reason. There wasn't really a point to.
Yep.
Seems like now that's more of a focus, which is nice.
Yeah, we've refreshed a lot of the news content, and the news is going to be very important for scouting. That's the only nugget I'm going to drop for you.
Okay, so, I mean, we've had that to a point before. It seems like it's going to be when the scouting update comes in, maybe in September. It seems
Targeting September. Targeting September.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But it seems like every week, I won't make any assumptions. Let's not do that. But what I will say is we saw the news in the past where, this guy was a two-way player and won the Heisman, and he's going to have a pretty good development trait. We've seen that before, so it's kind of like compounded on that, can I say?
It's modifying what we've had before and expanding on it. That's the way I would describe it, because personally I was never really a huge fan of tipping hands on what a player's development trait is, especially if they just sat there in that draft spot. So we have some big things planned.
Oh, here's news.
Yeah. So you have the top
here?
stories, the reactions, some snapshots.
Yeah, I mean, just reading this, it seems that the top stories really give you a good feel of what is happening across every game in the league that week. And it's specific. It's not just, Falcons lose to the Panthers. But Sam Darnold, and maybe this is where the realism kind of goes out the window. He had 4 passing touchdowns. But it is the Falcons defense, I guess.
Yep, and you are able to scroll over it and look through them. And yeah, so we've made some changes here. Obviously, this screen is not final, but this is definitely what we're aiming for. this is a fun one. This is your weekly schedule, so you can see all of the matchups that are happening during that week. You can see some of the top statistical performers on the right-hand side as well.
That was the big thing for me I was looking at. Justin Fields in there. It's a fun new addition. Also, Jamison Crowder leading the league in receiving yards. What a season for him.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Wilson, really good for him, I guess.
I suppose so. He loves to air it out. But yeah, I feel like this really makes the league feel alive. In previous games, in my opinion, it felt like you're just your team, you're living week to week, whatever. And you had to go into a new tab, you had to click league schedule, you could see different things. I don't really think there was ever a point where you could see every game at once, or every matchup at once with the logos. It really feels alive. That's the word I want to use the most here. It really feels like an actual league as opposed to, I don't know, a franchise simulation, as it felt like in the past few years, where it wasn't alive. Yeah. That's the only word that comes to mind here.
So the way that it was described to us was you were kind of in your own bubble.
Yeah.
Right? It was just you as a focus. And now the rest of the league is also being represented in a way that makes you feel immersed in what's going on beyond just the scope of your own interactions.
Yeah, it's definitely a super nice change. We are getting to the tail end of it here. We've touched on a lot of great things, and I can say this extremely honestly, and anyone who's watched my channel before knows how hypercritical I've been, and maybe not even hypercritical. I've been critical on things that are very obvious. But I think Madden 22, and I'm not just saying this because this is a sponsored by EA video, but I genuinely think that there have been some big changes made to this year and will continue to be made across the course of the year. Can you say anything else about the live content? You guys have a couple planned. We know the big one targeting September. We'll see what happens.
Yep, we have that, and then last year we had 3 big content drops in terms of continuous development. That's our goal again this year, to get that going. Obviously, we'll have patches and things of that nature, fixing bugs throughout the way, but we're always looking to add, to modify, to improve the game throughout the course of the season. So all the feedback that we get throughout the process of Madden 22's launch window, from the community playtest to launch to throughout the season, all of that is helping shape what we do in those continuous development drops and what we do in terms of planning for Madden 23 and beyond. So, we're really excited to obviously deliver everything that is in Madden 22. I think it's a big step forward for us internally. We're very happy with a lot of the new features and where we're headed. But honestly, it really comes down to what the community feels about it and what they want to see in the future. So all the feedback that we get is valuable and will continue to help shape Madden 22 and beyond.
Well, I think that's well said. Yeah, I think it's definitely an excellent step in the right direction. It's definitely not the same game as it was the past 4 years or so, in my opinion. But of course, that remains to be seen. Haven't played it yet. Excited for it, though. Thank you to EA for sponsoring the video. Thank you, Salami, for coming on. It's been a pleasure, as always. And I think that's going to just about wrap things up. Appreciate you guys. I'm excited for the new year. Hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed already. It's still my channel, my video. So hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on the Madden 22 content that will be coming fast and furious when the game drops in mid-August. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you again, Swami.
It's my
not
pleasure.
Salami. I finally got that change right. It's so confusing. And
No,
I'll see you guys in the
understand.
next one. Take it easy.
Insane, I hit it at the park, bend bones. See me high step to the end zone. My life like a game, Nintendo. Playing with the best, let them know. Get off the track, the train's coming through. Yeah, promise you get in my way, then you best believe I'ma just run over you. Yeah, Papa turn taking it back to the house. Defensive joke, I'm laughing so loud. Speed burst good.